Hi, welcome to Tuesdays with Rachel. I am glad to meet with you again this week. Today, I'm going to talk about multiplication math facts. I think I heard some of you groaning out there. If this is your first time with me, my name is Rachel, and I have been using Right Start Math for 15 years. Multiplication math facts are hard. Let's just get that out of the way. I have taught multiplication to all four of my kids, and only one did I not need to spend any extra time with him working on those math facts. The other kids, all three of my other kids, had struggled to some degree. If you have a child or children who are struggling with their multiplication math facts, know this: you are not alone. When I grew up, and maybe you too, learning multiplication math facts went something like this. On Monday, I was introduced to a whole new set of multiplication math facts. And all week long, we worked on memorizing those math facts, doing numerous worksheets, some of them timed even, doing flashcards. And then on Friday came the quiz. Anybody? There were all kinds of ways we practiced those math facts: worksheets, flashcards, verbal quizzes. But they all stemmed from the fact that I needed to memorize the math facts by rote. In the last several decades, the approach kind of came where the students were encouraged to memorize their multiplication math facts through skip counting. You know what that is: 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, skip counting. And then skip counting started now, right now, it's even starting at kindergarten, really early on, to kind of help break through so that when they get to multiplication later on, it's not quite as hard. Over the years, some very talented people put these multiplication, skip counting, math facts to song, which helped in the rote memorization. But here's the problem when we focus only on rote memorization of skip counting and songs. What does the child need to do to get to the multiplication math fact of something like 8 times 7? The child has to say or sing all of the math facts up to 8 times 7. You know how it goes. You have 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 56. 8 times 7 is 56, right? It takes that long to get there. Methods of practicing multiplication math facts are also tiring. And many times kids either get bored, they get exhausted, or just flat out overwhelmed. As I work homeschool conventions, I run into moms all the time who do not like math. They hate math. They have a high level of anxiety when it comes to math, and they worry about teaching math to their kids. When I explore that and I ask questions and talk to them, one of the biggest reasons they tell me that they don't like math is because of the timed worksheets and the flashcards. There is a level of stress created when we have our kids complete a worksheet, especially the child who is a perfectionist or who has a strong desire to please mom or dad, or if that worksheet is timed. Then when the child gets that worksheet back and they see all of these red marks on their paper or circles on their paper, they become very discouraged and they don't want to learn it anymore. So creative moms and dads, we decide that we're going to try another approach: flashcards, right? And for me, in my opinion, those are actually just a little bit worse. Or maybe it's just because I'm not a very good mom, I'm not sure. But this is how it went in my home. We finished working on our math lesson. We are going to follow up this math lesson with a review using pretty colored flashcards. And so I'll show a flashcard to my son, and he starts squirming. Yeah, and he's like, I don't know, and he starts guessing. He doesn't remember it. And so I start squirming, and I give him the answer. I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's try another one. So I show him another card, and again, my son doesn't know it. He's squirming more. My frustration's rising. We just did this in class. Why don't you know this? What am I doing wrong? Try this one, try this one. And the next thing I know, my son is starting to shut down. My frustration's rising, and his esteem is shrinking. That didn't work well for me. So I decided to try one of those computerized games that utilize something that he loves. He loves to play computers on the computer. So I get a computerized program that works on the math facts. And then if he gets enough right, gets a high enough percentage, then he can play some time playing the computer game. I found with that is my son spent more time playing the games than he did practicing on his math facts. You know, the reality is working on worksheets does not actually teach the child the math fact. It simply reminds them of what they don't know. If they don't know the multiplication fact on the worksheet, there's nowhere on that worksheet that's going to help them break through that math fact. But we say, oh, well, you just need to practice more. And what do we give them to practice more with? We give them more worksheets and more flashcards. Now, I personally loved worksheets and flashcards. Can you guess why? Because I knew all the answers. I was a fast memorizer. So worksheets were a nice little pat on my back saying, wow, I am just so smart. When the reality is I just memorized very quickly. So for the rest of the session, I'm going to give you some ideas of things that you can do with your kids and help them learn their multiplication math facts and practice them without overwhelming your children. And the first thing I want to do is get something totally out of the way. We need to give our kids time to process the math fact problem. You know what I'm talking about. With math, we feel like our kids have to have those answers right there, right there. We allow, in every other subject, we allow them time to think. So in history, we're working on, you know, what year was Abraham Lincoln shot? We allow them to think, okay, that's a Civil War time, and we let them narrow it down, right? But not with math facts. No, we have to make sure, come on, get on that, get on that, get on that. Dr. Cotter, who's the author and founder of Right Start Math, she says a child knows their math fact if they can answer that problem in 2 to 3 seconds. I have 2 struggling learners in my home, and sometimes they took 4, maybe 5 seconds to do it, but they answered it correctly. That was okay. I knew they had it. It does not have to be shout right back out. I recently had an email with a mom who had a daughter who was just a slow processor, and her daughter was really struggling because all of her friends were doing these math facts so quick, and she was just a little slower. And so one of the things I told her is I said, you need to actually encourage your daughter and let her know that it actually is a good thing. She is thinking through before she speaks. And that is a skill that so many people, so many adults need to have, but we don't. Thinking before we speak. Our kids do not need to have this quick response. Allow them time to process. If they are able to get it within 2 to 3 seconds, they've got it. Okay, next. Instead of flashcards and instead of worksheets, play, and if you were with me last week, you know what I'm going to say, play lots and lots of math card games and change up those games frequently. I learned this one the hard way. We were working on multiplication with my daughter, and I played one particular game, probably a little too much, like every day for an entire month, and she got a little tired of it. So one day the cards went up missing. And I said, McKenna, where did those cards go? And she's like, I don't know. And it took almost, I'm not joking, a year to find them. I had to order new cards and everything. But the following year, I found the cards. They were buried in one of my plants, in the dirt in one of my plants. She had buried them way down deep. So anyway, all I'm saying is mix up those games. Don't play the same game every single day. But anyway, a couple of games that I used when I introduced a multiplication group, like the sixes, let's say, multiplications of the 6 family group. I used multiplication memory. And if you have the math card game book, you will find that in the multiplication chapter. The number of the multiplication memory is P10. You can find it there. And I also used a version of Addition War. Instead of Addition War, I used Multiplication War. But when I was first introducing a multiplication math fact, like the sixes, I would have a static card. And how that worked was I would have the 6 laying out, and instead of turning 2 cards over like you do for Addition War, we just turned 1 card over. And whenever that card is, I multiplied it with that static card. So if I turned over a 2, I multiply the 2 with the 6, and the same thing with the opponent. And so that is a really good way for my kids, to just kind of get familiar with those multiplication math facts. There are plenty other tons of other games in that multiplication chapter. And Dr. Cotter has recently created numerous other multiplication math card games. You can find those games on our website, rightstartmath.com. If you click on the blog page and then click, there's a category section in the blogs. And if you click card games, it will just filter in all of the blogs that have to do with cards. And we have blogs that were written with lots of pictures, you know, step-by-step instructions on how to play the games. And we also have videos that have come out this past year showing you how a game is being played. Okay, so the next tip. When you're playing the card games, make sure your child is saying that math fact out loud. You've heard me say this again if you've watched any of my videos, and I'm going to say it again in the future. There is something about your child saying that math fact and their child hearing themselves saying it that helps in the retention of learning that math fact. So I always had my kids say those math facts out loud. Do the same thing. Your child will learn their math facts so much quicker that way. Okay, the next tip, work on their concentration skills. Sometimes my child would start playing the games and it was just kind of like this habit, you know, they would kind of like lose focus. And so new information wasn't necessarily sinking in. So I would help them kind of refocus into what we were doing. And some of the ways I would do that was to have them re-say a math fact. So if we were working on 8 times 7, I would say, as you know, sometimes they would just say it so fast, it was just blah, blah, blah. I say, well, let's re-say that. 8 times 7 is 56. Say it slowly, and things like that. So I would just have them re-say it. And usually I would have them stretch it out in some way, as slow it down so they didn't just say it really fast. Another thing that I did was changing the pitch of my own voice for certain math facts. The 6s were a really good way to do that. And like, we would do, you know, 6 times 4 is 24. You know, I would change that tune up, if you will, to kind of let it stand out, especially on the ones that they are struggling with. The other thing is I would have my kids work on the abacus. If there was a tricky math fact, I would pull out the abacus and I said, let's just nip this in the bud. And an example of that is my son Logan. He just struggled with, I don't know what it was, 7 times 7. He just could not get it. And so one day I said, you know what, Logan, let's just get this done. Let's get the abacus out and figure this out once and for all. So we did that. And I want to show you what that looks like. And I'm going to show you by flipping the screen to my share screen. So hang tight while I flip my screen. Okay, so here is what 7 times 7 looks like on the abacus. And I told my son, Logan, I said, Logan, put 7 times 7 on the abacus. And this is what he did. And I said, now what does that look like? And he says, that looks like a flag. I'm like, yes, that does look like a flag. Now let's calculate how many beads are on this 7 times 7 abacus. So he would calculate this. He already knew that this was 25. All these blue beads are 25. We would add in these 10 yellow beads, so 45. 35, and then another 10, which would be 45, and then the remaining 4 would take it to 49. And I said, okay, great, say that with me. 7 times 7 is 49. Yay, good. I said, now take a picture of it in your mind. So he would snap his eyes shut. We did that all the time. Snap our eyes shut, we take a picture of it, and we moved on. Well, a couple weeks later, he was filling in a worksheet, and all of a sudden, from, you know, a drill worksheet, the review worksheet, and all of a sudden my son just goes, oh. I said, what's going on, Logan? And he says, oh, I hate this one. I hate this one. I said, well, what is it? And he says, 7 times 7. I'm like, you know 7 times 7. And he says, no, I don't. I hate that one. I said, yes, you do like it. I said, you took a picture of it the other day. And he goes, oh, the flag, 49. Just like that. He got it because we pulled it out with the abacus. Let me flip back to full screen here. Okay, so if your child's multiplication math facts are really rough, I encourage you to take a week off of all lessons and just focus on playing math card games for that week, just to help your kids learn and solidify those multiplication math facts. I did this numerous times with my kids. Sometimes it was just a couple days to refresh. Other times it was for several weeks, especially for my struggling learners, to just nail down those multiplication math facts. What this did was it allowed my child to focus only on multiplication math facts and not learning a whole lot of other new material. And that really helped them break through learning those multiplication facts. Now, if your child is struggling with them and you take some time off of your lessons, I would encourage you to strategize how you introduce those multiplication math facts. What I did was I would pick a math fact, or kind of family, multiplication family a day. And I started with an easy one to kind of build up their confidence. And it was usually on a Monday anyway. So I wanted to start nice and easy on a Monday. And so I'd pick a number like twos. We would work on our twos that day. Then the next day I would pick a hard one, like the sevens. Once we worked on the sevens, then we would review the twos. The next day I would pick another easy one, say the fives. And I would review, once the fives were done, I would review the sevens and then review the twos. Then the next day I'd go back to a more hard one. I'd alternate days back and forth. That way my kids were able to mix in the easy days and use those easy days to break up those hard days of new learning. The really cool thing is the more you learned, right, the less you have to learn later on. So if I learned my twos and then my sevens, well, the seven has a two in it, right? So as we progress, more and more and more multiplication math facts are learned just naturally because they've learned them in the other family. So if your child is struggling with just a handful of math facts, couple, there's those tricky multiplication math facts, then pick one math fact a day and use it throughout the day, all day long, in class, out of class. So for example, if you're in science even, say, and your math fact of the day is 8 times 7, say, hey, before we do this experiment, I want you to tell me, what is 8 times 7? Or I would catch my kids, they were going up the steps. Hey, Logan, before you go upstairs, can you tell me what 8 times 7 is? Sometimes they would be in the bathroom and I'd bang on the door. Hey, Logan, what's 8 times 7? And he'd giggle, but he would tell me the answer. I would write them on the toaster strudel in icing. Sometimes I would open the back door as they were playing outside. I'm like, Logan, what is 8 times 7? And he'd answer it. I always made it really, really silly because I wanted it to be a fun way to learn the math facts that they were struggling with. And the more laughter, the better it was. They didn't feel like I was, harping on them all day long. But it was a great way to review the things and make solid those math facts that they were struggling with. In Level D, the second edition, there is a strategy that was introduced that my daughter completely latched onto. And it was this idea that you can solve multiplication math facts, even ones that you don't know, simply by building on the ones that you do know. And as I kind of started filtering through all of that, I realized that you can do every single multiplication math fact if you know your ones, your twos, your fives, and your tens, simply by adding and subtracting. So what are the easy ones, by the way? The ones, twos, fives, and tens, right? If you know those, then you can do every single multiplication math fact. Now I'm going to share my screen again so you can see how it works. So hang tight. Okay, so let's say your math fact is 8 times 7. Well, that one's a hard one. I use that all the time because it is a hard one. But we do know that 7 can be divided up between 5 and 2. 5 plus 2 equals 7, right? Okay, so now let's multiply 8 times 5, which is 40. And we're going to multiply 8 times 2, which is 16. Now we're going to add those two numbers together, and we're going to get 56. Now, while that sounds a little complicated, I'm going to give you a second to look at that screen. But while that sounds a little complicated, sometimes if you don't know a math fact, but you know how to get to it, it just takes the pressure off and you don't have to worry about it. My daughter just loved it and she learned so many of her math facts doing them this way. So hang tight, let me flip back to my regular screen. Use what works with your child. If your child learns well with the abacus, use the abacus. If your child loves to practice their math facts with the balance, use the balance. If they learn by moving, let them play games like a relay race while they're working on their math card games. Whatever it takes, whatever it is that your child does well, use those strategies, use that process. Help them learn their math facts by the things that they already are naturally good with. My daughter loves to write. She just likes to draw and write. So when I would have her play the addition war, which I turned into, of course, the multiplication war, I would have her write the problems she was struggling with on the whiteboard as she said them out loud. So if we came across the 8 times 7 and she kind of stumbled across it, I would say, hey, let's write that one on the board. And she can choose her color and she would write 8 times 7 is 56. And that just kind of helped her break through those ones that she was struggling with. So they became more routine for her. So I gave you a lot of ideas, or some ideas, and I hope that gives you some ammunition, if you will, to go into your classroom and help your kids learn their multiplication math facts. One thing I will say is just kind of help take that pressure off of them. Lots of laughter, lots of fun as you're working through a really hard thing of multiplication math facts. If you have any questions or comments, I hope you post them here. Or if you can, feel free to email me at rachel@rightstartmath.com and I'll email you back. If you found something helpful here in this session, I hope you click the like button. And if you know somebody whose child is struggling with multiplication, I hope you click the share and let them look at this video, and hopefully they will be able to apply some of these ideas to their own children. Join me next week as I talk about the questions I get from parents who are working in levels B and levels D and E. And those topics are mental math and multivides. So until then, I hope you have a great week. Bye, everybody.